Alright, brothers, welcome back, and I hope everyone had a relaxing holiday. I'm one of those people who takes AC's advice. I don't really celebrate Thanksgiving, but I do take it as a couple days of rest. I usually take Wednesday off and I'll just rest for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, spend time with family. We do cook usually the day before, but it's just so that we have food for the next couple days and we just chill out, make it a low pressure situation. But I'm not going to lie, I did spend a good portion of Wednesday and Thursday watching sports, eating food, and listening to the Danish Deception that Hardcore Tito put out. That was a great watch. I could put out 100 videos and not accomplish what these quiches will expose willingly to the public. Brad worship is a real thing, and that's why our best bet is to just stay away from them. If the woman in that video was willing to not only go into debt, but convince her family and friends to go into debt with her to support a Brad with a gambling addiction problem, then imagine what she would be willing to do if you were associated with her. These women are dangerous, and the best thing they can do for us in this day and age is expose themselves over the internet, because it only underlines and strengthens our talking points over here. It's the pro-blacks and the Pan-Africans who end up looking stupid trying to defend these women. That's why, if you noticed, I didn't devote full videos for that Jamaican divester who got taken out by that stalker Brad, or that cosplay girl that deleted herself. That Jamaican divester was a hater of black men, and I do not weep for my enemies. Same with Charlie Kirk. I do not weep for my enemies. Second of all, as far as the cosplay girl goes, I don't want anyone listening to delete themselves. That's never the answer. But I simply see that situation as something out of our control. This was a woman residing in primarily white spaces, seeking white validation. There is nothing we could do about that. And I see a lot of videos covering this story, trying to spread awareness of the cosplay society in regards to black women. But I'll put it to you this way. It's not my job to bully Brad into finding Keisha beautiful. I'm sure there are plenty of black nerds out there who have told women like this that they're beautiful, and those Keishas don't care. They're not looking for our validation, brothers. They're looking for Brad's. And just as a side note, I used to date a Becky that was into cosplay, and I found the entire thing cringe. A lot of women that get involved in the cosplay scene are really pimping the white nerds at the conventions. They are just dressing up sexy, making money off of content creation, picture opportunities and modeling opportunities within that community. But a lot of the women of other races that get involved in it aren't even really trying to date these anime nerds. However, when these Keishas do it, they're often envious of a lot of the Brad attention that these Beckys get when they dress up. So they dress up trying to seek that same attention with the intention of dating a Brad. And since their sense of value is so heavily tied to what these Brads find beautiful, they're willing to end their life when they don't get the equal amount of validation. And I don't mean to single him out again, but I did see that Sergeant Willie Pete had posted about this and sort of made it a conversation about black people growing up in white spaces. And again, I have to sort of bring up the fact that I was raised upper middle class, and believe it or not, I was not the only black person in my environment. There were other black families. We were grossly in the minority there, of course, but there were other black families, and all of us had a mother and a father in the house. It's very hard to get to that level without that. So when these Keishas try to downplay both parents being in the home, they are holding us back. Anyway, one of my neighbors were a black family, and the father was very militantly pro-black. Traditional pro-black, protect Keisha at all costs and, F Whitey, basically. And all throughout his house, he had African artifacts, and he was always going on rants about why black men shouldn't be dating white women, etc., etc. Anyway, his daughter ended up one of the biggest divesters on the planet. To this day, she's in her 30s begging white bums to marry her. Keisha culture is global. You don't get any more of a black space than growing up in a Nigerian culture, and yet we have the Danish deception lady. And when you look at Nigeria, they're one of the biggest purchasers of skin bleaching cream. So this is not a simple don't grow up in the suburbs black man conversation. There is a global and very resilient Keisha culture that has poisoned these women's brains. And we need to hold them accountable for that. And that brings me back to the holiday of Thanksgiving, because there is one other thing I do around this time, and that's observe the fact that at one time there were 100 million Native Americans across the Americas, and now they are the stark minority in just about every country in the Americas. I think there's barely even 10 million of them in America today, and a large portion of the ones that are here now are $5 Indians, due to the Dawes rolls. I also observe cautionary tales, such as Killers of the Flower Moon, in terms of what happened to the Osage Nation. And that nation was a nation of Native Americans who looked to embrace capitalism and working with white men as equals. And what happened is white men ended up practicing the age-old practice of we'll just marry the women and kill off and economically isolate the men. And because they tried to solve the problem of colonization with their women's vaginas, now they went from being one of the major producers of oil in the United States to a minority producer that gets a quarterly check from America for the limited amount of oil reserves that are still within their possession. Black man, this cannot be us, and we are the only ones who can stop it. This is why I go so hard against the Cynthia G's, who are trying to advocate for black male fetus abortion. This is why I go so hard against the Antonio Speaks, who advocate for white male black women relationships. This might as well be genocidal pro-Brad rhetoric, and we need to recognize it as soon as we see it. I was talking to one of the brothers in the comment section where we were kind of discussing that historically Brad really only has about 3 plays. He's got the buffer class play, he's got the colonization through religion play, and he has the marry the women and kill off the men play. And that kind of brings us to our main topic for today. One of the brothers in the comment section wanted me to comment on the 2 Texas men arrested for plotting to take military siege over an island off the coast of Haiti with the intention of killing the men and keeping the women and young girls as sex slaves. These 2 men were also producers of illicit child material, if you know what I'm saying. None of this should be a shock to anyone here. They love to talk about our culture and try to depict us as almost subhuman with a genetic predisposition to violence. But when you take a look at their culture, they were dabbling in sexual affairs with kids back in Rome. They've been doing it all through the history of the Vatican up until present day. We've all seen those stories. They've had church cults, Mormons practice polygamy with underage kids, and even into modern day, there are Mormon cults getting busted for taking underage wives. This is very much a reflection of something in their culture. This also aligns quite nicely with a sentiment that you've probably heard on AC's channel before, which is Brad is the original Pookie. He has committed the most amount of murders, the most amount of sexual crimes, and the most amount of theft historically. And as this economy continues to become a harsher environment for Brad, and that white privilege doesn't provide 100% of the solutions Brad feels that he needs to survive, you will begin to see him return back to that base nature. So don't be surprised when you see that. But without further ado, I'm going to play the intro to Neferkari Dessalines' video. He did a great job covering this story. He went into depth about the historical aspect of Haiti going back to the Haitian Revolution. And in certain respects, I agree with him as far as white supremacists do look at the Haitian Revolution as a sore spot in their legacy, and they do aim to get that lick back. I also acknowledge that after Haiti won its independence, European powers united to inflict trade embargoes on them, and their gold was stolen by the U.S. military and brought to Fort Knox. That is the only reason their country is in the position it is today. Brad likes to pretend that we can't run a country, when the truth is, all that we're missing is the resources that Brad stole from us. Meanwhile, Argentina has the largest white population by size in South America, and they need $40 billion of our tax revenue in the U.S. to survive because they're failing. That's how you know all of this race realism is bullshit. They have control of the money. So they fund what they want to fund, and they starve out who they want to starve out. That's the only reason we are where we are.
A federal grand jury indicted 2 North Texas men accused of plotting to invade a foreign island, kill the men, and take the women as sex slaves.
Prosecutors say one of the men enlisted in the Air Force to get military training he thought he needed. Fox 4's Blake Hansen in our newsroom tonight with these stunning allegations.
And there's nothing shocking about that, brothers. A lot of these Brads will join the military to learn advanced tactical training, and then they'll take it back to militias in their areas and teach those Brads those same strategies in the wilderness. It's no different than how a lot of Brads join the police force so that they can shoot black men under the guise of protecting and serving.
Blake.
Yeah, Stephen Heather, federal prosecutors say the suspects didn't plan to go it alone. In fact, the feds say they plan to recruit people who are homeless in Washington, D.C. to serve on their, quote, expeditionary force and take over a small Haitian island. The grand jury indictment handed up today charges 21-year-old Gavin Weisenberg from Allen and 20-year-old Tanner Thomas from Argyle.
Gavin and Tanner. So these were the Optimus Primes of Brads. But I want to take some time to acknowledge the fact that one of them has the surname of Weissman, and Weissman is a German surname but tends to lean in the direction lineage-wise of the Small Hats. And I just want to say, because sometimes brothers will leave me a comment about Small Hats, I would stay clear of that battle. That battle between Small Hats and Aryan Brads. Let them duke that out themselves, because what they like to do when we step into it, they like to team up and try to make us the poster child of anti-Semitism. We saw that with Kanye West. So let Brad fight that battle. Let's keep that pressure on Brad, because as you can see, they will gladly team up to take us out. Black people have been sterilized in Israel, and we've been sterilized in the U.S. So I tend to take the Tariq Nasheed position. It's just white supremacy. One side controls the financial sector, one side controls the military sector. That's basically it, but it's all white supremacy. Really, a lot of these are just mad that the Small Hats out-hustled them. They love to talk about 109 countries, but what they don't tell you is the reason so much debt was racked up through the banking system in those 109 countries is because Brad was racking up tons of debt, practicing colonization and imperialism throughout the world.
with conspiracy to murder, maim, or kidnap in a foreign country, as well as a charge of production of child pornography. Record Joe Weisenberg was booked into the Collin County Jail in July. We've not been able to find a mugshot for Thomas. Prosecutors say he was in the U.S. Air Force at the time. The place they are accused of plotting to invade is called Gonave Island. It is part of the Republic of Haiti. It's not small. In fact, that island has about 87,000 residents. Prosecutors say Weisenberg and Thomas plan to lead that expeditionary force by sailboat to the island, murder the men, take control of the island, and then turn the women into sex slaves.
Yep, and if Antonio Speaks ran that island, it'd be conquered in about 5 minutes because they'd be welcoming the white men. Please come marry our women. Please come marry our women.
According to prosecutors, the feds say the plan dates back to August of last year. They say Weisenberg enrolled in a Rockwall Fire Academy to learn command and control protocols, but flunked out in February. They say he then traveled to Thailand to learn how to sail, but didn't enroll in the school due to the cost. The feds say Thomas, meanwhile, enlisted in the Air Force in January and in March changed his station assignment from Germany to Maryland to better coordinate the invasion and recruit the homeless population in D.C.
And this is really why I felt it was so important to make the channel. I cannot emphasize enough that we need to leave Keisha behind and really start strategizing. Because make no mistake, this was a test run. These are not lone brads. Just like I said about the doxing site for white women and black men. These are not lone brads. Brad is on X, Stormfront, 4chan, 8chan, you name it, watching CP and strategizing on how to take you out. This is also why I say we have our differences. We have our SYSBM camp here. You know, I believe Neferkari Dessalines is a Pan-African. We have the OG Manosphere, and we have pro-blacks out there. This is why I say I try not to raise the sword too high at other black men because we have bigger battles ahead of us. There will be other Dylan Ruths. There will be other Buffalo shooters. There will be other Brad duos trying to practice neo-colonialism somewhere. We need to be ready, and we need to put our differences aside to conquer bigger enemies in times like this. Similar to what European nations did during World War II. You know, we have our differences. We'll solve that on the back end. But on the front lines, we need to hold the line here. Because there's bigger fish to fry. And I gave Sergeant Willie Pete a hard time earlier in the video. But one thing I will acknowledge is he's 100% correct about the Second Amendment. We as black people need to be staunch supporters of the Second Amendment. Because we need to be able to defend ourselves against threats like these. This is not a time to hand in our firearms to the government. No, we need them now more than ever. We just need to stop aiming them at each other and start looking at the big picture.
We reached out to attorneys listed for Weisenberg and did not hear back. We could not find attorneys listed for Thomas. Prosecutors say they face up to life in prison if convicted on the conspiracy to murder charge.
Kill the men and take the women as sex slaves. Kill the men and take the women as sex slaves. Kill the men and take the women as sex slaves.
Again, that will always be the strategy because that's how you truly conquer a people.
If you didn't know already, white men make up 29% of the U.S. population, but are accounted for over 77% of the people caught with child. You know.
I don't want to hear that from you. Weren't you saying again a couple weeks ago that white men make better partners with black women than black men with white women? So how are you going to talk about a stat like this? Don't you realize Brad controls the police force looks out for Brad in the home? So if Brad in the home is into that, who's going to protect those kids and that woman who are under his leadership? But anyway, brothers, stay on high alert in these times of economic instability, because these brads are going mask off. Also, we have a brother in the Discord offering investment advice, so any brothers looking to get started in investing, please refer to him in the Discord. And that's it, brothers. Enjoy your holiday. I'll be back soon with more SYSBM content.